How to remove the front lower wishbone integrated ball joints on a Jaguar X-Type 2001 to 2009. Here's the ball joint riveted to the wishbone, so you can't unbolt it there. Some models have this, which makes it a little bit easier to take the bottom ball joint out, but on these models, where it's integrated into the wishbone, it can be a little bit harder. Spray the 18mm nut with penetrating fluid and leave it a while. Take off the nut, and the shaft of the bolt where it meets the hub is still a bit rusty, so spray that again with penetrating fluid. Bend the metal protective clip away from the hub, then drive out the bolt with a suitable drift that has a slightly smaller diameter. I'm using an old bolt here. It's recommended to drop the subframe slightly so the rear bush isn't damaged when you push the wishbone down. Mark the rear bracket's position so it will go back in the same place. So you can take the two bolts that attach to the body out, and then the larger central bolt. You just want to lower that a few turns but not take it out. This gives a bit more play for the wishbone to push down, so do that before you start prising the ball joint out. At some stage I'll have to take the drive shaft out, and sometimes they're seized, so I'll just put some lubricant on this. Sometimes they'll just push out, but often you need a sort of puller to drive it out. The handbook recommends putting a chisel implement and opening up the spline a little bit, but you can't get a hammer in very well. So I found that that wasn't very successful. In the end I found you don't actually need that because the ball joint spindle is easily fitted into the hub anyway and isn't actually that tight. So my initial attempt at opening up the ball joint is with a big heavy screwdriver, and as you can see the ball joint's moving downwards, and then later with a little bit more force it moves down and then sort of clicks and stops and then springs back into the hub. So I'll put some more lubricant in the spline area at the back and try it again. Then tried with a bigger bar. Then I got to thinking that the wishbone isn't going down low enough, so to counteract that you can lift the hub up slightly with a jack, so that's what I did. But that didn't make any difference and the ball joint just came out so far and stopped. So I tried a bigger bar, a scaffold pole. You would have thought that would have done it. But even that didn't make any difference. Now if you look up closely we can see what's happening at the ball joint. You can see it protruding where the cutout is for the spline bolt. Now if we move to the side you can see there's distinct difference between the inside of the hub and the outside. There's a bigger space on the outside than the inside, and what I believe has happened is as the spline is moving downwards it isn't moving vertically down as it's attached to the wishbone at an angle, and when the spline recess on the spindle meets the spline recess on the hub cutout for the bolt, it naturally flops into this recess, which then wedges the top of the spindle ball joint at the top on the outside up against the hub, and as I said locks onto the cutout where the bolt goes. Here's a little drawing that I've made, a little diagram that hopefully looks a little bit clearer, but it's not easy to draw. Even though the spindle on the ball joint is flexible, it's still limited by the overall length from the wishbone and can't actually flex as it's being pulled out because of this. So either the hub is pushed in or the wishbone comes out to make the spindle shaft vertical. And then the spindle shaft will pass easily the spline bolt cutout and won't hook on the cutout. I'll show you later on in the video where I think the ball joint spline hooks onto and catches within the hub. So what's the easiest remedy for this? So we could try pushing the hub in at an angle, which isn't easy to do as it's limited by the drive shaft. I did try this and that didn't work either because I don't think it actually moved the strut inwards. So if we look at the wishbone, it's hinged horizontally and vertically. So I took this plastic panel out. The clips just pull out with a flat bladed screwdriver, which gives me access to the front bolt, and if I take this front bolt out it should be able to pivot the wishbone so it comes out a little bit. But first you want to release the rear bush mounting so it can pivot freely. Just undo this nut underneath. Now we can release the front bush bolt. And take it out and it'll flop forward. Now the wishbone's out, gives me more play to push the hub inwards, which is what I'll do, and at the same time pull down on the ball joint. So I'll put my bar in here and just bend it down as usual, just comes down to the sort of stop, and now I've got to push the hub in because I've got the extra play. When the actual spindle on the ball joint comes out, you can see that the hub is pushed in and it becomes vertical, proving my point that the hub actually needs to be vertical for the spindle to come out straight. Once it's out, if I zoom in, if you just look here, you can actually see where the spindle will hook onto the spline bolt recess. So there we have it. I don't think anybody's been talking about this. The only precaution you've got to be aware of is you don't want to pull the drive shafts out at the same time. In fact, if you look closely, you can see some marks where the spindle has been jamming up against the hub. So I hope this helped you out, guys, and I hope at least it'll stop you using a big bar and trying to pop them out and damaging the hub. I just wish I thought of this before I started damaging the wishbones and trying to fit separate ball joints in situ, which I found was extremely difficult and just about impossible to do. So in my case, I have to replace the wishbones as well. So there's my take on it. Don't try and yank them out, as they just actually get caught on the spline recess and need to be extracted vertically to come out properly. So there we have it. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.